Welcome everyone to the biggest and the gayest panel at Cannes. The video that you just watched is the Visible Voices series that celebrates LGBTQ plus community by making their voices visible and their stories heard. The short film follows the lives of 4 dentsu people who are from the LGBTQ plus community and it challenges the political and the societal landscape that they're living in today, not only in life but also at work. It's Pride Month in the US, which is the largest global pride celebration in the world. And although today we're going to discuss some of sobering realities of being LGBTQ plus right now, we know from COVID that you cannot cancel Pride. We also know from Beyonce that you can't break my soul. So I'm going to stick to my Chief Equity Officer job in the Americas. I'm Christina Pyle, I'm the Chief Equity Officer. Thank you for coming to the Dentsu Beach House. I'm joined by a pantheon of experts today from agencies, from brands, and from advocacy organizations, which is the trifecta of change. I'm gonna just let them go down the line and introduce themselves today, starting with Scott.
Hi everyone, happy Pride. I'm Scott Reed. I use he, him pronouns. I work for Meta in global industry relations, and I'm a gay man, and I'm grateful to work in an industry that is so supportive, and I will hand it over to Rich.
Great. Rich Ferraro, he, him pronouns, and I am also an out and proud gay man. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at GLAAD, which is an LGBTQ advocacy organization and nonprofit, and all of you, I'm sure, will appreciate our mission. We work through media, including a lot of partnerships with brands, to tell stories that create change, educate the public, and grow acceptance of LGBTQ people.
Good afternoon, Damon Jones. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at Procter & Gamble. We make stuff that's in your laundry room, underneath your sink, everywhere in your house. Our job is to serve the world's consumers, all of them in very special and meaningful ways. I'm glad to be with you tonight. He, him, by the way.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Cupworth, he, him, from NBC Universal. I head up our creative partnerships team. We work with brands and partners all around the globe to help tell their stories through all of our entertainment platforms. So thank you for having us today, we're very excited.
Hello everybody, I'm Emanuele Nenna. I'm the CEO for Dentsu Creative Seminat, which is Italy and some other countries around. And we are involved and committed to this kind of themes as we are a società benefit in Italy, a benefit corporation. And so part of our scope is trying to make business while having a social impact specifically on this theme.
Hi everyone, I'm Tamara Littleton. I use she, her pronouns, and I run the Social Elements, a social media agency working with amazing brands like Peloton, Visa, Nissan, Mondelez, and I also run a crisis simulation company called Polpeo, which may be relevant today as well. And of course, I'm an out queer leader.
Yeah, thank you. We have 40 minutes. We have 6 experts. We like questions. Whenever you feel like you have a question, just shoot up your hand. We will take your question. And then after, I'll ask that you stay and join us on the other side of this bar for some frosé, conversation, connection. But let's get started. So I mentioned it's Pride Month. It's a big time for the queer community at the moment. Across the globe, we are seeing a reversal in rights that we once enjoyed. There is a fearful right-wing narrative emerging, or that has already emerged. So my question to our speakers is, what is fueling this? Why do we feel like we're walking backward? What are your personal views and experience on where we are right now? I'm going to start with you, Rich, because at the GLAAD Media Institute and in your work, you track a lot of the stats, a lot of what's happening in the LGBT community in their lives and at work and in media.
Yes, and it is a scary time for LGBTQ people in the US and around the world. It's an alarming time. We're looking at over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in states around the country since January 1st. At GLAAD, we've counted over 160 incidents of violence or threats of violence against drag events. Some context on that number, we don't usually count because we don't need to. And now we've counted over 160 in under a year. We're also not only looking at the US, but that right-wing rhetoric is also, we're seeing it in spots like the UK and in Italy as well. In almost 70 countries today, it's still illegal to be LGBTQ. But I'm gonna give you all some hope as well, because that was like a downer, right? The hope is that flag at the end of this boardwalk, the dentsu pride flag. I think I didn't expect this Pride Month to be one where at GLAAD, almost every other day I'm working with a new brand who's facing anti-LGBTQ attacks for participating in Pride. And we all know the ones that changed their Pride plans, changed their LGBTQ marketing plans. They've been dominating the headlines, but there are hundreds of brands that have stood their ground and have not given in to anti-LGBTQ attacks and hatred. Because the numbers, I've been at GLAAD for 15 years, so I remember this around marriage equality. When I started at GLAAD, we didn't think we'd see marriage equality nationwide in my lifetime. But you know what helped change that is brands and corporates, media, NGOs, all working together. And that work now has to happen again for our community. Hundreds of brands are sticking to their Pride plans, and those companies are the ones that are not making the headlines because the anti-LGBTQ activists are moving on from them. So I think that should be a big lesson to brands. If you don't want those PR headaches, not that you should not do Pride, but you should do it in a way where you stand by your values and stick by the community.
We're going to come back to brands and the power of brands to change the narrative and to show their bravery. Emanuele, can you talk about what you're feeling in society? You live in Italy, you work in creativity, and this is personal for you.
Yeah, I think it's a very bad moment in Italy for rights, I would say for human rights, but we are talking about Pride and this kind of content. Because the government presently is really stepping back from all the conquests we did in the past. So, and in terms of communication, our goal, our job is harder and harder because just a simple example, we launched a Pride campaign, even if I agree our job is every day, not only in the Pride month, but just to state something, we started this campaign, we proposed to the clients, we did it 2 years ago, we did last year, and this year we were not able to collect enough clients to jump in for this campaign. The reason why is because the government now is on the other side, and brands, they are not brave enough to go against the government. I cannot blame them because of course they have to do business and so they have to manage this. So probably it's not the best period for brands to take a position now, and so again we have to, maybe Pride is a protest now, maybe these years we just have to be able to contribute to a culture which is more open than really a protest, because if we go too ahead with this, the risk is that brands, they are not ready for this year from this moment, and I hope it's gonna finish soon, but presently the situation is bad. And you have listened to our colleague Maurizio in the video, which is reality. He's coming back from the US with 2 sons and is not having any kind of right in Italy, and that's really a bad moment, I would say.
Tamara, you're the founder of a social media agency. You listen to the internet. Do you have any reflections on what's fueling this fear and fueling this right-wing narrative?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I mean, in the UK, I mean, we sometimes live in the industry bubble where we think everything's okay. But over the last 6 years, according to the police reports in the UK, through Freedom of Data Act, over the last 6 years, hate crimes for the LGBTQIA community has gone up by 348%. So this is definitely happening. It's not just that, it feels a little bit different. It's, the data backs it up. And I think it is a combination, particularly in the UK, from my own perspective, it's politicians, it's the media, it's become very polarized. There's a huge anti-trans sort of hatred at the moment, which is awful. And I think it's just affecting people in that way. So yeah, it's kind of depressing, and sorry to depress everyone, but the truth is that we do actually have to do something about this.
we'll end on hope. But Damon, I'm going to tee this question up for you. A vocal, hateful few are having an outsized impact on brands and how brands are showing up and behaving in messaging. Brands are nervous to act. They're nervous to respond. They feel like there's going to be an inevitable backlash or alienating of some consumers. So is brand bravery foolhardy? Is it risky? How do we coach brands to stand their ground in the right way?
I think it starts with who are you as a company and who are you as a brand. And as we think about, the brands that we have, which are everyday cleaning, household, and personal care products, we serve people, right? And we serve all people, and we serve all people in the way that they need to be served. So part of this is even when you have discussions internally and you think about, well, do we do A or do we do B? You go back to your purpose. And for example, our job is to, take a brand like Pantene. Our job is to serve people with hair, right? And we've all got hair, right? And so no matter what your hair looks like, we need to serve you, right? And we launched a campaign several years ago called Hair Has No Gender. And part of what that campaign celebrated was the moment as certain people transition through, right? The look, their coming out, if you will, was a powerful moment. We can make that about advocacy and trans rights, or we can make that about individuals and supporting them in a moment where they need to be served, right? And so throughout all of the insight work we do, we look for meaningful, eye-opening, heart-opening insights, right? And so, yes, we proudly show and celebrate trans people, but we make it about hair. If I think about all the things that we do and we look at a bevy of influencers, yes, we have LGBTQ plus influencers, but they've got great skin and great teeth and they shave and all of those things. So when you can put someone's lived experience in the context in a meaningful and inspirational way for your brand, you get to have a conversation about people being served. And that's really hard to push back against. So my advice is to think about, what is your purpose? How do you link back the benefits that your product provides? And then how do you find an insight to capture that for a mom, a dad, a family of any nature? And when you do that, we think that's a way forward through there. And those are things that are hard to poke at, right? Do you not want someone to have clean teeth just because they're gay? Like, it's kind of hard to poke at, right? And so finding those insights in a way that are true and relevant and resonant for any consumer, and doing that in a meaningful way. And I think that's where some companies run amok a little bit. They try to overly market to any particular audience without truly understanding them. So when you truly understand people, you connect in your lives, I think that's a way that you can have that conversation 365 days a year, not just during Pride Month.
Your brand values just came through so clearly. If I didn't hold the mic right now, I would clap for you. You did touch on something about serving all, and Scott and I were talking about how Meta as a brand has to serve over 1 billion people. So the question back to you on brand bravery, brand risk, and navigating this ever political and polarizing climate around consumers.
I think a platform like ours with 3.8 billion people around the world using our services every day. Like for Pride Month, my dollar is just as gay July 1st and beyond and around the calendar year, right? So if I'm being marketed to only within the confines of a celebratory month, a historic month, I'm missing out on something else the other 11 months of the year with an outsized footprints and outsized responsibility. And I think companies in positions like ours or P&G need to take the stand and encourage other brands to not be so afraid. I hear marketers say a lot that there's this kind of fear or hesitation around marketing to and for this community, but there's nothing new about being LGBTQ. What's new is the way that we're covered, the way that we're perceived, and perhaps some things like the rocket success of something like RuPaul's Drag Race has given visibility to heightened drag performance in a way that hasn't been seen in the past few decades. So it gets covered in this way and it gets weaponized by people who don't agree with it. And it's this sort of pendulum and slingshot. And it happens around the world in aggregate all the time. So by having conversations like this at a company like Dentsu, thank you for hosting this and giving us the priority of your canned slots, that's how you create change. And that's how you keep up, you keep the same energy.
Can I build on one thing on that? Because I think that's a particularly good I mean, it's an advantage of being here at Cannes, right? I mean, you've got people here who want to partner in that. And one of my colleagues, Brent Miller, who leads our LGBTQ equality programs, always says, every Pride Month is someone's first Pride, right? And that's equally applicable if you're a person or if you're a company. Right? And so our challenge is to welcome people into the conversation and then to help them take 1 or 2 steps forward. So there's lessons and insights that each of us have learned along that journey. How do we help people come in and progress that, right? Because it is a scary time for people who are just entering the conversation. So I think we welcome them with open arms, and we need to partner together to help people understand how to lead this conversation in a very responsible way.
Well, I'm gonna push on that a little bit, because I did talk to Brent before I came up here, and I think that's so eloquent that any Pride, anytime a brand steps out and they say, hey, I want to participate in Pride, that's somebody else's first Pride or their first exposure to the LGBT plus community. But it can be risky for brands to do that. And Jamie, you've been so patient, and I definitely want to hear
I have so
from you.
much to say. Don't
Okay.
worry, I'll get it all
right.
in, I promise.
Okay.
No, but when you talk about brand bravery, right, and we as NBC Universal, we reach over 1 billion people every month between our linear, our digital, our streaming services, our movie studios, everything that we have globally, right? So we take our responsibility in creating and storytelling very seriously, because we know that we have a huge impact, not just for brands, but also for human beings, right? So when you're that, like me, when you're that gay kid in Pittsburgh, Kansas, who never saw anyone like themselves on television, when we, we can start to create a space where people can see themselves every day, and they can see a Will, or they can see, Jack, or they can now see, cast members from SNL who are out loud and proud. We're starting to create that groundswell of safety for people who never felt it before. So we're first of all doing that through our storytelling. Second of all, we're doing it through our businesses, right? So we work with brands every single day, helping them tell their stories through our platform. So we're consistent. I will speak over that, I promise. So we're continually working with brands every single day. And we're going to talk more about brands in a minute, so I'll hold tight. But consulting with them, looking at them, partnering them with the right talent to help advocate for them and through our voices and through our channels, but telling their right story, right? Because you're right, not every brand is going to be able to tell the exact story they want to at every single point in time, but we can all together help them consult, whether it's through an agency or through being a good example or being a media company. We're fighting this fight every single day, and anyone who wants to step up to the plate, we're ready for you.
Real quick.
Oh yeah, jump in.
We're all going to jump in. You go.
I'm just fighting now. I think it's also important to just say there are some really practical things that brands can do. It's almost, we have to assume that there will be a backlash now. So if you kind of assume that there will be a backlash and you go in prepared and you have the brand messages and falling back on the values, of course, but just being prepared for that, having maybe even sort of thinking about what could happen so that the brand goes in really strong. And it is also about not doing a U-turn and actually sticking up for what you've done. So if you're going to be brave, which every brand should be, but go in with your eyes open, don't do a U-turn, because that actually ends up being even worse. So I think it is, I kind of want to be the voice of hope that actually you can think about what's going to happen, be prepared, get that tone of voice absolutely right. And obviously I'm running a social media agency, so it's all about tone of voice on social, but it's absolutely critical.
And I think the risk is not including LGBTQ people, and that's what our data shows. And 4 years ago, we did a survey with P&G of the Gen Pop, and we found that 75% of consumers are comfortable seeing LGBTQ people in ads. And we've done that survey each year over the last 4 years, stayed stable at 75%. 70% of folks said that they felt better about a company seeing LGBTQ people in those ads. So I think we are hearing backlash from a loud minority. They are very loud, but they're not where their Gen Pop is, and they're definitely not where their future is. So if you want to future-proof your brand, think about the fact that 20% of Gen Z are LGBTQ, and that number grows year over year in the Gallup poll. Your future workforce is LGBTQ, and if you can include allies, that number grows exponentially, right? So your future workforce is LGBTQ, your future consumers are LGBTQ, and they're looking right now to say which brands are going to stand by us during a time when we're under increased violence and under increased rhetoric.
So it's not brand bravery, it's about winning the future, it's about $1 trillion buying power.
And it's about the safety of your consumers and your employees. And
Yeah.
exclusion is not safe. Exclusion is like not a value that your brand wants to have, right? So I don't think it's a matter of if you should include LGBTQ people, it has to be about how to do so authentically and to plan what happens if you do have anti-LGBTQ people. The same if you include other diverse communities, if you do have those folks speaking back against you.
So we're in the French Riviera celebrating creativity. So let's talk about good work, good representation of the LGBT community. Brands have a big role to play in making the world safer for our community, all communities. And looking at advertising's role in shaping society, opinions, perceptions for anyone, it's a powerful tool that we wield. So my question is, where are we doing it well? And where can we do it better? What campaigns are resonating? What work is resonating?
So I can start on some of the work that we've been doing with brands, and specifically, excuse me, one of our shows that we do a lot with is Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen's been a fantastic spokesperson for the LGBTQ plus community, and one of the interesting things is that a couple of years ago he was going through the adoption process with his first son Ben. We were approached by our friends over at Bubbly who have also supported LGBTQ plus adoption, and so we were able to create a really powerful partnership that really got to the root of authenticity in storytelling, right? So we partnered Andy with Bubbly with his process going through the adoption, and actually shined a spotlight on it. And it was a great way for people who, everyone loves Andy, right? It doesn't matter, because it's not about convincing the LGBTQ plus community that this is cool. It's the other people, right? So you're now looking at what's the bridge between, how are you using Andy to tell the story of Bubbly and tell the story of this, and then also we are able to shine a light on the work that Bubbly's doing as a brand partner and help tell their story through our media applications. So this is where we look at, again, we're helping the brands tell their story through what we're creating and the popularity of our content and talent, right? So help us help you.
Yeah, I think we are doing well in terms of evolving the language, evolving the attention, because the brands and we as a advertiser, we do this job for the society, and this mold the society in a proper way. But I think that what maybe it's a point of view from Italy. It's not worldwide, but also UK. I see it's not so different. What we are missing is the find the solution to really push forward, to move from stating something to doing something, and this is really critical. Here's where I feel brands are not brave enough. Sometimes, not always, of course, but sometimes brands, yes, they know that they are speaking to a new target which is very conscious of these themes, so they do the proper thing for the society and for themselves. But when it comes to take actions and take risks, so risking also to maybe sell less products, we have some great exceptions, but it's not the average. And if it's not the average, I think we are progressing very slowly, so we can do more, and we can force as agencies, we can try to force more, and clients has to try to push us forward for this. I think we're still in that comfort zone, say okay, it's good, but not too much, and that's bad.
And I think that agency brand relationship is so critical, because it is, the industry has done some amazing work with representation, for example, of sort of like just having same-sex couples in ads, and it's got so much better. But sometimes it's just the little moments every day of pushing back. So I know that we've worked on campaigns with Oreos, where we sort of stood up for the trans community, for example, and we had a banking client where they were supporting Pride, and people were sort of attacking them and saying, I'm going to leave this bank because you're supporting Pride. And basically we were empowered by the brand to just say, thank you, sorry, here's the link to close your account. And it was just so powerful to just, we're not going to stand up for this, we are going to stick to the values. So I think even just those little everyday moments count.
Yeah, I would double down. I mean, I just think there's an element to human authenticity, right? When I think about people who, like you said, just show up, and something about moms, right? I mean, something about dads, and the fact that they're LGBTQ plus doesn't always have to be the headline, right? And so the power of normalizing the conversation is hugely significant. But I think one of the other conversations, again, being at Cannes, is that there are a number of things a number of companies can do, right? And there's a lot of focus on brands, and we've got to do that. But I think about a company like iHeartMedia and what we've done, some of the work we've done with them through some of their programming. They're just putting it out there, right? They're saying, hey, we're here. This is an offering that we want to do it. And they're treating it like they're treating all of their other properties. So it's beauty in what it's doing, but it's beauty in this being part of the portfolio and just talking about it, just doing it, going on and doing it well. I think that's a statement in and of itself.
And the partnership between P&G and iHeart called Can't Cancel Pride really raises the bar for corporate allyship and what it looks like during Pride, where they create an event broadcast on Facebook as well on iHeart, on iHeart's Facebook page. But it's an event that features community members, talent, everyday folks, and it focuses on the community, focuses on the issues, and it's some of the world's biggest brands. P&G recruits others as well, and then there's a give back portion as well, where they've raised over $11 million for LGBTQ nonprofits, GLAAD and Trevor Project, the National Black Justice Coalition, and other great organizations. But every year the community looks forward to it, and the brands are not front and center. The brands are behind the scenes, and they're standing with us, not marketing to us. They're joining our movement. They're not marketing to that moment.
It's an incredible campaign, and it's 4 years strong. So, Rich, I'm going to stay with you because congratulations today in the press release. GLAAD just released the Advertising Visibility Index with partnership with Kantar. Can you tell us about the impact of representation in advertising, and what are some of the most impactful takeaways from the research you're doing, and how do we use this tool, the index?
Yeah, and the data kind of backs up a lot of what all of us have been speaking about today. So today, article right now in Ad Age, GLAAD released our first ever advertising index. So we've measured representation of LGBTQ people in television and film for decades. And that tool that we do annually in those industries really creates accountability. And we've seen and we've met with those studios and networks to grow their numbers. We haven't done that for advertising until today. And what we found was we looked at over 430 ads from the top 10 spenders, top 10 advertisers on linear TV. Only 3% of those ads included LGBTQ people. So all of this rhetoric around companies being too woke and everyone is being too diverse, well, not on the LGBTQ front. We're still almost invisible and light years behind where TV and film are. One of the reasons why we're at Cannes, because I think that we could do a lot better in the advertising industry, and there seems to be that energy to do so. And then when you think about screen time of LGBTQ people, of those 430 ads, the screen time was under 1.5% of screen time included LGBTQ. Most of that inclusion as well was LGBTQ celebrities, not like Damon and others have said, like humanizing stories of the community. So with Kantar, we also polled consumers to say, when brands include LGBTQ people in ads, what do you want to see from them? And this wasn't just asking LGBTQ people, it was the Gen Pop. 80% of consumers want to see that multi-dimensional depiction of our community because they know that we're not all celebrities. We're not all Elton John or Lil Nas X. We're moms and dads like other folks have saying. So I think the headlines for us are that the advertising industry is grossly underrepresenting LGBTQ people in mainstream ads, but that consumers are ready and even hungry for it.
Where can we go to learn more about the index and encourage our agencies and brands to participate?
Yeah, it's GLAAD.org/adindex. And we do hope that you'll use the data because I know there are these tough conversations happening in agencies, happening in brands around how do we include LGBTQ people? Do we? What about the backlash? Well, this data shows where the Gen Pop is and shows why it makes the case for inclusion.
Are we all up here? Are we all committed to taking the index?
We're all in.
Okay. I am going to take an audience question before I come back and we end with Joy. So, yes.
Thanks. I'm Benjamin Cohen. I'm the Chief Executive of Pink News. I think it's great all the progress that's been talked about, but one thing that hasn't been talked about is treating LGBTQ plus owned and operated media with equity and investing equally. I think it's important to think about that, yeah, representation is important across the board, but we have 150 million users. Our users wash their hair, they eat cheese, they do their teeth, they're doing things all day long. But we're not necessarily treated with equity by the ad agencies and brands for our audience in the same way that we might be if we were one of the legacy non-LGBTQ plus owned and operated media. So I'm just interested in thoughts on that.
Yes, you're right.
Hey.
I do think that there's an opportunity. One of the things, and obviously we buy a lot of media. We've recognized that, frankly, we've not been as deliberate as we need to do in a range of media where it's LGBTQ plus or Black-owned or Hispanic-owned, and so we've committed to raise the bar on that. This year we hosted a series of upfronts that were dedicated to diverse-owned media. But you're right. It's something that desires equal focus and inclusion, and part of the opportunity, I think, is for us to figure out as media partners. You guys bring a tremendous amount of insights that allow brands to help connect with their consumers in authentic ways that I would argue are more brand safe, if you will, because you're targeting what you're doing. So the opportunity for us is to figure out how do we get that balance. But I think you're right. It's a huge opportunity that, again, we need to elevate forward.
The community has more than $1.4 trillion worth of spending across an annual basis. We see the value in that. We've actually created specific efforts through our DEI. We have a chief sales officer who's really focused on our DEI efforts. I'll get your card afterwards. We'll get you connected because we're very much working in that space. From a production standpoint, we're working with diverse-owned production companies. We think it builds better content. When we were working on Bros last year with the first outcast from a major motion picture, and on the flip side of that, there's work to be done. Right? This is not all Pollyanna. We're not saying everything is perfect, but we are all working very hard in our own rights to continue to make efforts. So
yeah.
I'll get your card after.
No, you asked a powerful and provocative question, and I'll say at Dentsu, after the murder of George Floyd, we did look at equity. We're like, are we really delivering on equity? We looked at our investment with Black-owned media, and when you look at one group, you create a wake effect for other groups. So we started to look at other groups in our investment. We created a show called More Than That with Gia Peppers, which was shout out to Paul, shout out to Diva. And this was a all Black crew, from distribution to production to the talent. And then in the season that we're doing right now, it's an LGBT. It's that same crew, but LGBT. And Paul is in the room, and I would encourage you to connect with Paul, who is deeply invested in LGBT-owned media. Is there another question? Everybody's just ready for Frosé. I'd love to go down the line. Tomorrow we can start with you. Scott, we can end with you. These are heavy times. We're talking about tough issues, and for some of us, there's intersectional identities of oppression, and I just want to know how you're still keeping joy alive, because our LGBTQ stories can't just be about oppression and hurt. There is also pride, and there's joy, and they can't cancel our pride. Tomorrow I'm going to start with you, or how you're keeping your joy alive and spreading it.
So when I'm not running two companies, I sing in a pop choir. And I also live in a house that used to be a music and drama school that has a stage where I do karaoke. So I'm a big fan of singing. And when I get back on Friday, I'm actually landing and going straight and performing in a cabaret. So I find my joy with singing.
I think something that makes me joyful is looking at the babies. I have a 4-year-old daughter. We were on the beach last weekend, and she was discussing with a friend, a baby girl, and she was saying, "Oh, I don't have a boyfriend now. I have a girlfriend." She doesn't know what it means, and the other guy and the other girl was saying, "Oh, but you cannot get married with a woman." And that was so funny that my daughter was saying, why not? And the discussion became to the parents. And they said, no, no, but they can. So it was really interesting how at this level the discussion is, no, but it's a binary. It's not binary, not even understanding it, but it starts a conversation. I think this is something that makes me happy because it means that from the back of the society is growing something new and interesting. The discussion, but also the solution for this.
I've got a great family. I've got great friends. I love spending time with them. I'm really enjoying this season of RuPaul's Drag Race, the All-Star. That brings us a lot of joy on Fridays. But and being here is fantastic.
Oh my!
I mean,
God.
this is incredible. And being part of this community is a lot of fun. So I love it.
I would just say for me, it's staying connected to people who are benefiting from the work that we do. And if you think about the stories, I mean, I had conversations with people who are with the company, with P&G, 1 or 2 years. I've been with the company 26 years. And the questions are, what is it like being a gay man there? And it was like, I didn't think about that when I was 1 or 2 years in the company because it was just not something we talked about. But keeping in mind who you are serving and being mindful that not just in our roles and our jobs are we working for brands and companies and nonprofit organizations. We're role models to people, right? And so it's a reminder to that people are always watching, even when you're not paying attention, and how you live and speak in your authentic way, in your way, because everyone, not everyone's out and proud in the same way, but that makes a difference, and more people are watching. So that to me adds both pressure but reward to know that there are people who benefit from some of the doors that we hopefully can push open.
Drag queens.
Oh.
Nothing more joyful than a good drag show.
And they should read to all of our kids.
Music. I strongly suggest listening to Jake Shear's new album, Last Man Dancing. He wrote most of it while living in one of Elton John's houses, and you can tell. It is super queer and fun and dancey, and it's 50 minutes of just pure joy. So I turn to joy, whether it's drag or live music or trying to go out. And if it is your first Pride or 50th Pride, keep going out and supporting LGBTQ-owned businesses and vote with your wallet and just keep it up also beyond June.
So my little piece of joy is in 3 weeks I'm marrying the love of my life, and I'm grateful to this crew. I'm grateful to you for ensuring that we have the same rights now and in the future. So thank you for joining us for this session because you could be anywhere on the Quaset, but you're here with us. So please join us for some drinks.